Well, hey, you know what time it is? Welcome to another edition of the Gamer Gambit, where a fateful roll of the die will leave you in awe or indifference. What have you brought for us
Welcome back
today?
for another week.
Yeah,
Olaf.
thank you. Thank you.
So this week is...
Do we have a
Chook
product sponsorship in place yet? Should I position that
yes.
appropriately? Yeah. Brought to you by Lacanoix, I think is what that is.
Now you have to blur it out because if this video gets so much negative reviews, they're not going to want that product placement in there.
Right.
This is... There was no defined way to pronounce it, so this is Chook and Sosig.
Oh yes.
Perhaps?
Yes.
By Tuki Paluki is the developer. All right, so this is Chook and Sosig. I'm sure that's pronounced, by Tuki Paluki. This is just some raw footage of the intro, and then I'll kind of skip around and skip through it. You start off. You end up being this cat on the left. You are Sosig. And the way that this sets up is you are playing a kind of tabletop RPG with your friends. And this is an intro screen in the game.
This is like a game.
And it introduces you.
This is a game within a game?
Right, yes. So you're going on an RPG adventure, and you turn out to be the cat in this one. So this is Chook and Sosig Walk the Plank. The full title in case they do more. So this is your cast of characters here, your friends. The gentleman in the entity in the center there with the glowing eyes in blue is Elix. I'm not sure how that's pronounced, but that is the kind of the dungeon master, if you will, adventure master.
Sure.
But the game starts out and it attempts to build a personality for each one of these characters by their opening dialogue. So this dog-looking character on the right is Exley. There it is. This dog-looking character on the right is Heppel, and Hebel. Sorry, there it is. Hebel, Hebble, and Hebel is very narcissistic, I guess I would say, in this game. He's always... You came to
know the characters.
Well, basically, he's always talking about and talking up himself and always giving himself kudos and always tossing in fun, eccentric spin-offs to the story. So how this... I don't know if back in the day, if you ever played games like Laura Bow and the Dagger of Onman-Ra, or the original King's Quest.
Yeah, that's
series.
What I'm thinking. And currently it's I forget. There's one now out on Steam you see a lot that is the same type of thing.
Right, Chook and Sosig. I'm joking. But yeah, that's what this game is. Except they spin that RPG bubble around it of the character sitting at the table. So now you're actually in the RPG experience, adventuring around, and it's just like those King's Quest or other games where all you get is a mouse and you have interactions with characters. In this, there's no consequence for choosing the wrong action like there would be maybe in some of those other games, but you get a sense of the different characters within your RPG experience, and some of them match up. They match up, I think, pretty good to their actual character, or the actual type of character or person that they are outside of this experience. So You start off here, and you're just kind of clicking around, going through the dialogue, and this is what it explains to you in the beginning. To say, when you specifically say when you're outside of this, hey, I don't even know how to play, and they're like, well, just talk to our characters in game. So throughout the whole entire game, this is so meta. Where, well, right. So this adds more. So now you're back out of that experience, and the characters interact a little bit with their personalities outside the experience based on what you're doing within. And the overall goal is they're trying to they're trying to not let you immerse yourself too much into that this is real. They're trying to make sure that periodically throughout, this is my interpretation, they're trying to make sure that periodically throughout the game you still get the feeling that you are in that RPG experience like you would doing a Dungeons and Dragons campaign or something like that with your friends, and they have their own personality and you're going through this. So there's that break moment where you might break character or something, a little laugh, a little giggle, but then you jump and dive back into the RPG or get back in character and continue the experience.
Yeah, just like
so
it would actually
that's kind of my take on it. So multiple times throughout this, you go back and forth in and out of that tabletop scene and their characters in game. So this particular character is mounted on a plaque, which I didn't notice until the third time I came in here, that I thought it was that character was like leaning on the table, but no, it's just the head mounted on a plaque.
Yeah, in the trophy room.
Right. So this is like a general store, and I can start fast forwarding now because the game's kind of long, but you're kind of figuring out what you're doing and why. The game initially starts off where the pig character is a pirate, and she cannot get her ship free unless the fountain is on, because if the fountain is not on, then I can't remember if it's like a mist fog or some creature will just, like, no ship's made it back alive or whatever if the fountain's not running. So basically that sets you up on like the first quest or first side quest, is you got to figure out how to get the fountain running. So as you go through, you click around, figure out, you have like a little inventory. I broke the torch out of the shop and I'm running around and I say, okay, look, here's a fountain. So I end up getting the fountain running. This is like a ghost chicken, which is Chook. And
okay.
This is your hint character. So anytime you want to have a hint, you can come back here and hold down the space bar and you'll get a hint. And then the carrot jumps out, and after Chook explains to you how to get hints, it jumps back to tabletop and you call it out on cheating. Hey, tell me how to cheat. So, they give some kind of fun twist interactions like that. It helps build a little bit of the character for the characters for as short a game as this is. So I appreciated that. There wasn't like, it felt like they were trying to establish some type of personality for the characters, which is cool. So I end up getting the fountain going. This is Hebble's character within, and then after I get the fountain going, which turned out to require to need a passcode.
Is there a battle mechanic too, or is it all just like interacting with the environment to work through encounters?
It's all just talking, and it's all just mouse click interacting. You're either engaging in dialogue or you're interacting with the environment. So to start the fountain required this little 4-digit passcode, and I'm like, when I got these in games, that was only a 4x4 or 4x3.
You're just gonna work it out.
Instead of going and figuring it out, I would just brute force it and just go through each one.
Right.
But for the sake of this, I went through it. I found all the clues and got all, I clicked on this and clicked on that, got the clues, found it, got the fountain going, and then she's ready to sail. So you have these there's 4 initial islands, 3 you haven't been to. They have question marks. So you have to visit each one, interact with all the characters, figure out what the kind of theme of each island is. And as you're exploring the islands, you run into characters with very blatant things on the ground to pick up. Like this, you can see there's a pair of scissors on the ground. So you'll have stuff like that, these things that you can click on that give you hints like they would in some of the other games. In this particular island, you click on a patch of leaves and it says, oh, well, there's an orchid on the ground and it won't grow because it's in the shade. We'd have to find something to cut I'd have to find something to cut these leaves to get it to grow. And then you see the scissors on the ground and it's like, okay, I might be able to use the scissors to cut it. But when you talk to them, they're not going to just give the scissors to you freely, even though they're right there on the ground. No. You have to do a task for them.
Yeah. So
that is essentially the whole entire game, is going from one puzzle to another puzzle to unlocking another island. And each one of the islands, you'll see the same characters that are at the table, but they'll have a different character on this island that they're RPGing, that they're role playing. So here's Hebble, and he's like, that's an adventure place, and he collects all the animals on the wall. And you come back to each one of these islands 2 or 3, 4 or 4 times, depending on what you need or why. One of them, in that particular scene, there's a polar bear rug on the ground. And at one point you interact with another character on another island that says, hey, I'll give this to you, but first I want this. And then you, through dialogue, say, well, what is it? Where is it? Where can I find it? And that's a recurring theme with each one of the things you got to get, is they each help you with where to go next.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see the polar bear rug on the ground. Well, one time, for example, I came back here and because some character wanted something that was stolen by a polar bear that floated away. And from one of the other islands, they swam away, and it's like, oh, well, the polar bear probably didn't make it, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, you come back here and it's like, oh, the polar bear's on the rug. So it's in the polar bear's mouth. And in order to open the polar bear's mouth, you have to click on the tail. So it took me a minute to kind of like figure that out, where it says, oh, I'll have to figure it. You click on the mouth and it says, well, it looks like there's something in there, but I'll have to figure out how to get the mouth open. And it's like, it's a rug. Just bend down and open the mouth. But no.
You have to
click on the tail.
You have to play by the rules of this game.
Right. So you have to click on the tail, and then you get the open the mouth. Here's one example where I ended up clicking on this because he mentioned he had a map, or there was a map, but he forgot where he put it. So I clicked and clicked and clicked and peeled it off. And then when you go through more interaction, you find out that the map actually has more on it, but he wrote it all in invisible ink. And the only way to reveal it is with a particular dye from an orchid. And I'm like, okay, an orchid, am I saying that right? From a plant. And that was the plant on the other island that you have to get do the task to get the scissors to cut off the thing to get. And
you file this away and know that you have to go back. Yeah.
Right. So that's the whole entire theme of this game. It took me, I can kind of skim through, but you reveal more islands, and it's all the same characters from the table, but different versions, different personas.
Just like a real game.
That they are role playing.
Yeah. So did you beat the game?
So yes and no. So one thing that I found out at the very end that they did take, I don't know if they based it on it or not, but the games like King's Quest and Laura Bow, you could lose.
Yeah.
Right? Like you could actually die. You could actually, in the case of Laura Bow and the Dagger of Amun-Ra, there was you got to a specific part in that game where you actually got into like the catacombs area, the catacombs and ceremonial area. And if you did not get the smelling salts from like the second hour in the game, there was no way to beat it, because you had to wake somebody, and it let you wake them without the smelling salts. But as they would wake, they would stumble and step on a nail and fall into a furnace and die. And you couldn't get out of that room without 2 people, because the boulder or the weight holding the door needed 2 people. But if you didn't have the smell, and you didn't know that, right? You're like, why can't I get this room? So you had to get the smelling salts, and then the smelling salts, he would wake up more potently and come more alert, and then you wouldn't step on the nail, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's a different game. But this actually captured some of that, whether it was from that or not. So I'll fast forward to the end here.
I mean,
at least where I got at the end.
Space Quest was totally my jam, and this is just like that. Like, there's comedy to it. They're sort of doing something serious, or like King's Quest was the serious version. Space Quest was the hilarity ensues, and so I really dug that. And there were a lot of games back in this time that worked kind of this way. Leisure Suit Larry was another one that I remember that was pretty funny. But I love this does capture that nostalgia, even though this may be kind of a new concept.
Right, yeah. So I got to the end portion. Oh, and let me see if I can get to the... So this comes down and it asks you a specific question at the end. The DM does, and this is the part. So the end thing that you're trying to find is a treasure, and oh shoot, I forget. It asks you about a treasure, and you end up getting the treasure, and then it comes to this particular portion, and when I I missed why it was asking what, like how I was supposed to answer, because a lot of the other dialogues were, hey, what do you know about the scissors? And then they would say, oh, well, the scissors, well, you blah, 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 blah. And I'd say, okay, well, what about that? And then what about that? And then tell me more. And then, so you're clicking through a lot of the dialogues, and no dialogue has any consequence except for this one.
Okay.
So I was actually able to do this twice, but I guessed presumably wrong with one of them. And it let me, it switched immediately to the ending credits when it did so. I think this one's it. Let's see if this is it. So it came just to the end, and I'm like, I thought I beat it, but at the same time, I remember that there's one island that I couldn't get to yet because I needed to put two things together. So if you, I'll get back to that in a second, but you notice it let me click on continue game, right? So I come back here, and this is one of the last things that you do with all the other islands is you're lifting the curse, and there's the pig, right? So you give it this skull, so it's phantasmic form, has a full head or whatever, and then it immediately kicks, so that RPG portion ends, and it goes through the same thing again. And then I chose a different answer, and when I chose this different answer, it kicked back to the credits, but there was no continue game.
Ah, okay.
And I went through from start to finish without saving a game, so I didn't have anything to load, and there's no auto load.
Yeah.
So I would say I would leave it up to an exercise for the viewers who their friends, children, whatever, that check this game out. If you enjoy this kind of RPG experience, check the game out, and I will leave finding and discovering what that last island is, where there's a goddess involved. Presumably, if you answer following the game enough to answer that up to that point, and then you can piece together I think of it as like a staff in the staff room from Raiders of the Lost Ark. But you have two items, and combining them will help the pig ship navigate to that island. There's like a cloud around it, so you can navigate to that item. But it wouldn't let me continue the game again, and I didn't have anything to load. Right. So that's how
you hit a dead end.
And that was Chook Sosig. I hit a dead end, and I had an enjoyable time as far as this this genre goes. So the score. So the score, I flexed a little bit. I gave this one a full 5.
Oh wow. Okay. Is this your first 5?
Right. So I think so. So.
Yeah.
So for what the game was, there were a couple of spelling errors and simple stuff like that. But from an art perspective, it was fresh. It was themed when it came down to being on islands, or being in ships and pirates and islands, and like a Pirates of the Caribbean kind of thing. There were islands that were named like oh shoot, I can picture the words in my head, but I can't remember.
Tortuga
it was like a Hidden Atoll was another one. I had Tortuga. And then there was a dragon spine or something. There were islands. Their art on the map reflected very much what the environment was when you went there. There were some puzzles on how to get into places. And otherwise it seemed like a very solid theme when it came down to the characters during this RPG experience, how people were dressed, how people were acting, and even a reflection of their true character from that tabletop persona versus.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting element that they threw in, the meta of the fictional real character versus the fictional character.
Right. And within that, how that each time you saw that Hebel, for example, each time you saw him, each different form, he had something that reflected that self-overworth. Not overworth's the wrong way, but that overhyped self-esteem and everything, right? In the very beginning, he talks about himself very highly about himself. He's a lazy worker in the tavern, in the tavern scene. He's always, and the characters interact and talk about it a lot about he's been on break for like 3 days at his job. He's like not doing anything. Then there's a guest sign-in book that is spammed with comments saying how good the name of his character in that place is. So he interacts and jokes with you about how he went and wrote all of those comments about himself in the comment book, in the guest comment book of that place. And then another portion, you unlock a section and he's sitting there half mermaid in a bathtub behind a shower curtain in the middle of the island.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And he has something that you need, and what you have to do is he gives you posters, and you have to put posters of how awesome his mermaid self picture is. You have to put that on 3 different poster boards that are around the island. So you have to either picture or remember, where those were, and he kind of helps you. But that's more to that kind of character within a character, as far as everything that you do and interact with him is something about him gloating or talking up himself. So I think that transition from that tabletop into the game and the reflection of each time you see one of these characters, I thought that was done very well, for as short as this was. So the story narrative, that was a one. The controls were simplistic for these kind of games where you're just kind of clicking around, investigating each screen, what you can click on, what you can't. The mechanics were pretty solid. There was the cheating way or whatever that they introduced you to. You can hold in spacebar and it will pop up glowies on things that you can click on around a screen in case you need some help.
Oh, I got you. Also asking Chook, right?
Yes, and asking for help, he'll kind of guide you to the next step, which maybe that's a negative in a sense, where the game's very linear.
So you said it was pretty short. How long did you actually spend on it?
It was about 220 from start to end.
Okay.
And I'm not a fast reader, but when it comes to the majority of the character interactions, I would say the 80-90% of the questions and or responses were 6 to 8 characters or less.
Okay.
There wasn't too many that was more. So really, from clicking and asking a question, you can really spend about half a second or a second on each dialogue and still get everything without needing to read like the articles and all that. So you know what I mean? You can kind of piece together what the characters are saying. So you can kind of go through the dialogue a little faster if your eyes are good at picking that stuff out. But yeah, so it was like 2 hours and 20 minutes. Could I do it faster now that I know where a lot of the stuff, puzzles and stuff are? Yeah, I got hung up on a couple of spots. I did go and ask Chook for the next thing twice, and in both cases, I was already right on what I was supposed to do next, but how I was supposed to do it was not, I would say not as obvious, but I wasn't doing it right. I knew exactly what I had to make happen, but I wasn't making it happen right. Whether that was clicking on the right thing or using the right item at on the right object.
Mm-hmm.
There's many campfires in there, and then one of the first things you get is a torch, and you have to figure out how to get the torch lit. And then where you light the torch, the island is raining on the outside, so you have to figure out how to get the torch to stay lit, which is just using rum, fitting in that theme. But then the torch stays lit for the rest of the game. So there's fires and cooking pots and all this stuff. You just use the torch on it all the time. That's obvious. And you find a parrot, and there's a couple of things where you have to, something is stuck, and how you get it unstuck is you use the parrot on it, because the parrot likes to attack things. So in the beginning, I don't know if you saw, there was 2 rum bottles, one was rum, there were 2 rum bottles right by the opening dock, and one had a cork in it. Well, how you get the cork out is use the parrot, and the parrot pulls the cork out, because you can't. I mean, to me, that's like maybe a little nonsensical, but there were a couple of places
but that is how these work.
I got stuck, because it's like, yeah. But that's the game. Let's see, controls art was kind of refreshing. The style kind of stayed together.
I thought the art was really great.
I think it's
the animation, and something of particular that I noticed was that there was actually some depth of field in the animation. So some of the elements that were up closer actually were blurred out a little bit from the elements back behind.
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that. Good eye.
Hey, good eye.
And I just realized that I had my since I reconnected, I forgot to turn my video on. But so be it.
Okay.
But that was Chook Sosig or Sosig.
Well, awesome. Yeah, that was a bit different than what we're used to seeing these days, it seems.
Yep, and it deserved the extra time on the review, I guess. What was yours? Was nullpointer.
Nullpointer, that's right. Nullpointer, and nullpointer is by Prophet Goddess, actually. Syndrome.motorcycles. Yeah, indeed. So this actually was one of the sort of humorous things that happened in this particular game, is that it had this sense of nostalgia going on as well. And in this case, it also would show you these like ads, like you can imagine some of the weird ads that you might have hit in the 80s or 90s. I guess it would have been in the 90s when you were on the internet. And so some of these ads feel very reminiscent of that. And you'll notice as I fire up the audio that some other things are reminiscent. So there's our classic modem sounds going on there. So in this game is really simple.
There's those modem sounds.
Yeah, exactly. So you get the classic modem sound. You get some interesting text that comes up, like you're, at first when I saw this, I was like, this is believable enough that I feel like there is maybe some adware going on in this game, but I think it was just purely for the synthwave feeling that clearly it is depicting and doing so quite well. And so it's a first-person shooter. You go in and hit these geometric elements. You're running through a geometric world. Everything is brightly colored, highly pixelated. The colors are on point. The effects are kind of cool, right? A little coarse, but kind of cool. The audio, I mean, I actually was fine with this audio. This audio I thought was really great for what I was doing. The mechanics were a little bit strange. Like, I felt like the bounding box on some of these was a little odd, and it might have actually been that at distance there was like some of these weapons may not have gone the distance. And this glitching of the screen that you see here, this is great. As your health gets lower, then the screen starts glitching out like that.
Oh, interesting.
And this Taurus that I just jumped into actually takes you to another level where you actually get a perk, so you can update your character, right? Add something. And I found that lifesteal was the thing that I needed most, because I was, you're getting hit and you don't find a lot of health, so being able to have your monsters drop health was very helpful. You'll notice the terrain also has like spikes around on it. You could walk on that stuff, and it was only when you dropped on it that it actually hurt you. And
what about jumping?
I don't think jumping hurt me either. It seemed to be only like a more considerable drop that it would knock off a point of life. And if you fell out a window, you also died. Right, there are like the idea of windows. I actually, when I first played this, there are 3 weapons you can choose, and you can't choose them in game. You can only choose them at the beginning of the game. So you basically are learning to beat the game with various weapons. So I tried all the weapons, and I wound up liking this railgun the most. It had the longest range, and this is what happens when you die. Yeah. So.
Oh dang.
Yeah, I was actually terrible at this. I played many times, and like I said, the railgun was my favorite weapon in the end, because it was at least pretty close to a one-shot kill for most things. What got me the most, though, was like in the beginning, the environment, understanding if things were coming or going, or what things could hurt me and what things couldn't, whether or not fall damage was going to be a thing. Like, there were all these elements that intuitively I wasn't sure about. And the first time I played this, when I saw this Taurus, I must have spent a minute and a half shooting that thing. I assumed
you dying must be a boss.
Right, exactly. I assumed it was a boss, and I just like things kept on coming at me, and I was firing away at that blue thing, and of course it never even took damage. And then eventually I was like, maybe it's a portal, maybe it's different, and I jumped into it and leveled up, as it were. I also noticed that if you find that thing very early, you do not level up. Like if you just go and find it and jump in, it does regenerate the map, but you don't move on, you don't get the bonus, you don't go to the level 3, anything like that. So you have to spend some time destroying things, or maybe you have to get a certain point total before you can get to that next level.
And did you say this was procedurally generated?
Well, I don't know for sure, but I mean, it's pretty rudimentary map, and clearly the ground could easily be procedurally generated. Here's what happens if you fall outside of it. You just kind of flip back to the starting point. So I don't know if it is or not. I think it is, because it's just hard to tell, right? Like between games, was it the same? I don't think it was. It always felt like I was looking at something different. And the grid walls made it really hard for me to know which way I was going at any given time.
Right, just the same texture.
Yeah.
Makes it.
And the ground was, the elements on the ground were different everywhere, you know.
So what I gotta ask the $1 million question here. Did you record this at a different resolution than what you played it at, or is your cursor really in the bottom right quadrant of the screen?
The one that's moving now? Oh, so
Where your reticle, sorry.
Oh yeah, that is kind of interesting. No, so I didn't even notice that before. Yeah, I don't actually know what happened there. It does look like there's some scaling going on in the video, so that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I hadn't noticed that. So it was in the center. It was more reasonably oriented.
Okay.
So this game I wound up giving a 2 out of 5, and I did so because the art was kind of confusing to me. Like it was okay, but I just felt like it could have all been crisper, or you know, I don't know, better articulated, something like that. So I didn't give it a point for art. The mechanics, I struggled with the mechanics a little bit because of the way the environment wasn't so intuitive. I wasn't sure if, like those green things that came at you, I wasn't sure if that was health or guns or what, but I think it was points in the end. It was just kind of difficult for me to tell. Oh, geez. So there was a lot of stuff about the way that the game worked that I just wasn't certain about. So I didn't dig those elements. And then, of course, there was no story here. There's no narrative. The music I gave it a point to because I thought that was pretty cool. And the controls I gave it a point for because the controls were actually very smooth. Everything seemed to work pretty well. It was part of the mechanics, right? It was disappointing that I couldn't change weapons in the game. I wanted to be able to switch out and try different things as I was playing, and maybe use them for different purposes, different enemies. But after having played it, I read up a little bit more on it. And what was interesting about it is that this was actually produced for 7DRL, which is a 7-day roguelike. And 7-day roguelike is a concept. I don't remember what game it was built on, but the concept was everybody was mad that the big roguelike games were not getting finished, and so they started holding a competition to sort of show the big businesses that you can finish games. You can actually put your mind to it and finish it. You just have to set your scope right and power through it. And so they created this challenge that they do every year, and I think they still do it. Where you have to create a finished game, a roguelike game, in 7 days. Now, I would not call nullpointer a roguelike, but you know, that's right. They did contribute it to 7DRL, and so maybe it's expanded a little bit on the original idea. But I did think it was cool that this is a finished product that somebody put together in 7 days, which is what you have to do for that particular contest. So I will give props to that. And I will actually give a bonus point because it was kind of fun, right? Like I actually didn't have a problem just jumping in, playing, losing quick, getting right back in and starting again. I did get better over time, so it didn't take much. But I was just really impressed that this was part of the 7-day challenge that they put all this together, and it's a finished product, and that's great. Definite props for that.
Good deal, and that is nullpointer.
Nullpointer, yep. So that takes us to the end of our time where we may, and I say may because I have to have my bot running, of course, but we...
Time to run the gambit.
That's right. Time to take a jaunt. And I'll fire it up in the downtime. You got any jokes?
Yeah, but you'd have to edit them out.
It's not kid approved. It's not even YouTube approved. Wrong directory. I really need to get this back up into the cloud just to run all the time. But this is the freeway.
Yeah, I was curious if you ever figured out about how much it would cost a month to leave a bot up there.
It didn't look like it would be. I was able to get it down pretty low. The problem is that I was also synthetically running up the bill because of that recycle that it was going through. So it was,
right.
The app was restarting so frequently that was running the bill up even more. So I never have figured out why it was doing that. I have to believe that it was the type of container I threw it in or something. So I just need to run it in a ACI container image instead of trying to do anything fancy with it. All right, we are running.
Here we go.
Yeah. Nile pudding. I like that. TV guide by Llewellyn Nile Pudding Griffiths. That's a lot of words. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what is your title? I'm a little unsure of what I'm even looking at.
I'm scared, but it doesn't have, it looks like straight in the browser. It looks like a free game straight in the browser.
Okay.
Oh, here's more information. Let's see. So it is called The Guide by Llewellyn Nile Pudding Griffiths. And the description is time to watch some quality TV. How to play. Click tap on the television to progress the scene. When you reach the end or get bored, simply change channel.
This is it, right?
Probably do next. I think I could probably do next week's review right now at the end of this.
We could do a live showing. The question is, what was it created in? Because I may know some tricks as to how to edit it or even finish it, should they have not have finished this particular game.
HTML5.
Right, yeah. Familiar. The one I forget the name. It was like 8-bit or something, but it was a JavaScript based game. All right, and mine was Gunhouse, which actually looked like it could be awesome. Kind of, this is kind of interesting in the same vein, perhaps, of what I was just in, the synthwave idea. Certainly, we've got all the pinks and purples going on here. But yeah, this looks like an arcade side-scroller, classic Nintendo type game. This could be like, maybe this could be a return to Cuphead if you ever played that.
I did not.
And it looks like
maybe like Contra or
yes,
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
any
like the arcade
Konami
version,
game.
or Double Dragon. Yeah, Konami games largely fit that for sure.
Right. So that looks great. That'll be the title for next week. So that should be entertaining for sure. And yours should be interesting. I'll be interested to see if it is a product that needed some tweaking.
Well, until next week, Olaf, good game.
Good game, Corey. See you then.